We moved into this house in 1987 as a project of my dad's. None of us wanted to move except for Dad. And it was a dream. He's a country boy. Even though this is in Capitol Heights, there's a lot of land associated with this house. So it was his dream. My mom didn't want to move here, and none of us. But honestly speaking, once he showed us the house, once he showed me the house, I understood. It was a charm about it. So yeah. So from '87 on, we've lived at this house, and we loved it.
911, what's your emergency?
All right, so if I recall, I had called Stephanie just to talk to her, just to chit chat, and we were just talking about different things. I knew she had a leak in the ceiling, so I was calling to ask her how things have been going with regard to that. And so she was telling me that the man had to come back because he had to go through the ceiling and do something in the dining room. So we were talking about that, and then we were talking about other things or whatever. And then she said, well, she was like, what was that?
I got a call. I had just talked to Stephanie maybe a half hour prior to, and she, we were talking about there was a water leak in the house. And we were talking about, that having to be repaired. The plumber was going to come back the next day.
She said, I heard like a boom or a psh sound. But we kept on talking. We probably talked for another 5 minutes or so, if that long. And then she was like, I smell something. And I was like, what's going on? And next thing I know, I could hear her getting up out the chair. And we laugh about that now because prior to that, she had been having struggles with moving around. But that day, I heard her jump up. I heard her move quickly. And she got to the hallway and she looked upstairs and she said, that's fire. She said, that's fire. I said, do you need me to call 911? And she was like, yeah. I think I asked her, I said, is your mom there? She said, no. She said, Eric took her to dialysis.
So we got off the phone after talking about that. And she called me again, only to tell me that the house is on fire.
And so as she was going out the door, she said, Eric is coming. Eric is here now. And so I remember I hung up, I called 911 and, I had to make sure I had the right address. And I'm telling them, I was like, my girlfriend is in her house. I said she made it out, but she said the house is on fire. And they were asking me all these questions. And I was like, ma'am, I don't know because I'm not there. I said, I do know she made it outside, but she did say that it was a fire upstairs.
Me and Mom was on our way back, from dialysis, So by the time we got here, I saw Babe coming, running out the door, like she was falling down. So Mama said to me, what's going on? What's going on? I said, I don't know, Mama, but just stay in the car, stay in the car. So as she come down, she said, Babe, something blew inside, So I'm like, what? So yeah, so I runs inside, and the place is smoke, man. It's smoky. So I takes the extinguisher and I runs up to her room, thinking I can put it out, what I'm saying? But it was so thick, man, I couldn't see, So I came back down, and came outside, and then I went back inside.
Kind of stunned me, but I made my way to the house and it looked like something from TV where, you couldn't even get close to the house because there was so many fire engines and, paramedics, and it was just crazy that night.
So I got in the car and I rode over there. And when I got on the street, it was full of fire trucks. it was just so many. I hadn't seen that many fire trucks in a while, but they were all up and down the street. By that time, Stephanie was sitting in the van with her mom, and we were all just really thankful that everybody had gotten out and that everybody was safe, because she was getting ready to cry, and I said, we're not going to do that.
They came in, they went upstairs, breaking windows and things of that nature, and they did their job, they did their job.
I'm the type of person, when it's time for action, I get calm. And when I get real calm, I'm actually scared. So when I got here, I don't show a lot of emotion, so when I got here, I look for my family. And the first thing, with all that running around, the first thing I said to Stephanie when I laid eyes on her, laid eyes on my mom was, I got this. Don't worry about it. I got it.
Everybody was okay, a little shaken up about it, you know what I'm saying? But, we take it, we came away with our life, and we still with each other. So, yeah, it's a hard thing. It was a rough day, It could have been a whole lot worse, man. So, I thank God for what it is.
They've thrown our whole life just out of the window, man. Just, it was hard. I didn't break down to cry, but man, that broke my heart. That broke my heart seeing, that happen. It was terrible. It was terrible.
I walked around to the back and I saw where they had thrown all this stuff out the window, and that kind of hurt my heart a little bit. But I took some pictures of what had happened, and then it was getting late, and I remember I think Scotty said, we're going to take them, Ma and Steph, to a hotel. And so I know that's what happened. They went to a hotel for that night.
I was able to get them. The Red Cross came. They helped that night. Again, never been through this, so you don't know what happens.
I guess for me, it was the uncertainty, right? Thankfully, no one was injured. No one was hurt. No one was caught up in the fire or anything like that. It was just you start to think about, your whole life, right? And you start to think about, wow, you don't ever think it would happen. You hear about it, but you don't think it would happen to you. So, but, a lot of the initial chaos and just the rush of the emotions, it kind of subsided once they got settled into where they were staying that first night.
One of the crazy things during this whole process, while all this is going on, you're dealing with the fire department, you got fire truck chasers, as I like to call them, coming up to you telling that they can put this thing back together, that, it's going to be all right, or, and that's not the moment you want to hear that. You're trying to get things situated. So, yeah, I wasn't paying any of those guys any mind. And it was actually pissing me off that during this time, we're looking to pounce on that. So, by this time, it's dark, because it's the winter time. It's cold. It was in January. It's dark, and it was quiet, man. It was eerily quiet. And the only thing that I could hear was the water cascading down, from the first floor, all the way down. And man, it hurt. It hurt, knowing that their house is ruined. It's ruined. And it's on me, man. It's on me to get their lives back together. That was hard. I prayed to God, that, God, like, where do I even start? Because, my mom is elderly. She's got dementia. She's got to be on dialysis. My sister's got lymphedema. It was hard, man. It was hard sitting there saying, what am I going to do? The day after, you know, when the sun is up, I don't know, that was hard. You know, seeing all their belongings, man. It's just, you know, I mean, I get it. You know, the fire department had to do their job, you know, but it's just hard. It's just devastating seeing your whole life out on the back, or, you know, the stuff that's in the house. You know, I mean, the smoke was so, man, you had to go in with, you know, one of them gas masks, you know, because it was tough. It was tough to, you know, to see all that devastation. What the fire didn't destroy, the water did. What the water didn't, the smoke did. You know, it was bad. You know, it was, you know.
Steve DePaula here with Chevy Chase Remodeling, full service restoration, mainly fire damage, large loss claims. We worked with Mr. Midget and his family after he had suffered a fire to his home.
So there's a lot of paperwork involved when things like this happens. And mortgage companies and insurance companies, and as hard as this was, I thank God that my mom had the insurance that she had, Chubb. And I'm gonna say it, she had Chubb insurance. The funny thing about having Chubb insurance is my mom picked that insurance not knowing how great it was, based off the simple fact we had a dog named Chubbs. So that's how Chubb ended up being our insurance, because she just got a good feeling about it because we had a dog named Chubbs. So Chubb it was. And, you know, they came out right away. They took care of everything. I dealt with a gentleman, Robert Tompkins from Chubb, greatest dude ever. You know, they took care of everything. He walked me through processes to get the monies and you know, get our belongings taken care of, and making sure my sister and you know, the family was, you know, in good hands. You know, so between that and, you know, getting everything together, that went smooth. The mortgage company, different story. The county, different stories. You know, a lot of red tape that holds things up. And, you know, I'm just gonna say, always make sure that you got your ducks in order. That's, you know, bottom line. So I was able to meet gentlemen from Chevy Chase Remodeling, you know, Steve. You know, Steve understood, you know, my situation with my mom and with our family, because, you know, Steve was going through a lot of the same stuff.
So all that culminated to a situation where we felt like we could do the right thing for his family and get them back into their home as quickly as possible, given the amount of money that was given to him by his insurance company.
We walked in one of the rooms that wasn't as smoky. And I told him, I said, man, I got a certain amount of money, you know, from insurance. I don't know if this is going to take care of it, but this is all I got. You know, but, you know, can you put this back together? He shook my hand and he told me, I got it. This is the money we got. This is the money we're going to work with, and we're going to make it happen.
So the day Stephanie got sick, you know, we got the phone call. She hadn't been feeling well, and I had been on a few appointments with her due to her condition. And, you know, she said she hadn't been feeling well. And so, you know, she called Scott again, you know, and was like, hey, I don't feel good. You know, I'm going to the hospital. Because she wasn't getting better.
She didn't sound coherent. Didn't know what was going on. Because I had talked to her over the weekend, everything was fine. Come to find out, she was in the hospital suffering from pneumonia. Stephanie suffers from lymphedema, which is something else that we had been dealing with through this whole process. And, you know, from the lymphedema, the fluid actually built up in her lungs. When she went into the hospital, even just trying to find out where she was a task in itself. But luckily, my wife was able to handle that while I was taking care of Mom, while I was taking care of the house. So, you know, total team effort. I'm taking care of everything. Eric's taking care of Mom, you know, at the extended stay where they were. You know, so things were still fluid. You know, because Mom's was on dialysis, we still had to get her back and forth. Thank goodness we had good church people and people around us that helped out tremendously. But still, you know, like I said, every day it seemed like it was something.
The sepsis, you know, it was all over her body, and it affected her brain. And it was scary. I mean, it was scary because, you know, we thought we were going to lose her. There was a lot of uncertainty with her being in the hospital and being sick. So, you know, she knew who I was, but she wasn't talking a lot.
I'll be honest, by the time I got to the hospital, she was awake, right? I know that prior to that, she had not been, you know, alert and awake. So by the time I got there, she was awake. She was very swollen. We were having conversations, and that, you know, didn't always, you know, make sense to us. She was asking about her mom at the time, and, you know, we just kept, you know, just tried to keep the conversation going. But by the time I saw her, she was doing much better than when others had seen her.
Mama basically, man, you know, she was worried, you know. She was worried, you know. I think we prayed, she said, you know, it's gonna be all right, it's gonna be all right. That was the thing, it's gonna be all right, you know. But at the same time, you know, I was like, wow, you know. It was like an ordinary, you know, morning, you know. Got up, made a breakfast for, you know, and it was just me and her. It was our day off, you know. So we sitting in the, she's like laying in the bed, you know. She got a TV on, you know. She had her breakfast and everything. So I said, well, look, I'm gonna be sitting out here, you know. If you need anything, just, you know, holler at me. She said, okay, baby, you go ahead, you know. I'm here, I'm all right, go ahead, you know. So, man. It must have been about maybe about 4, maybe 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you know. And I noticed, you know what I'm saying, she was still asleep. So I said, let me go in there and get a plate, you know. And when I went in the room, I noticed how she was in the bed, you know, and I said, Ma, I called out to her, you know. And I got closer to her. And I looked at her arm, you know, and I touched her arm, man. And it's just like it had a wiggle on her, you know what I'm saying? She got big arms anyway. But it just kept going, like, you know what I'm saying? And I knew.
I get a call from Eric one evening. He tells me Mom's not breathing. I already knew. I knew before I left my house to come to go over to where she was, that she was gone.
It was sticky. I don't know another word to use other than it was kind of sticky because, you know, 3 days prior, Stephanie was hospitalized, and now Mom is gone. And, you know, Scott got that call. And, you know, and Eric said, you know, Mom's not breathing. And he was like, what? And Eric said, Mom's not breathing. And so when I heard that, you know, I saw him and I got to him because we were downstairs in the house, and I got to him. I was like, just go, you know, just go. And he looked at me and he went out the door and he stopped by the truck and he just paused for a minute. You know, he took his moment. And my heart hurt for him. And I was scared.
Over to the house. I go over to the hotel, and she's in the room. Paramedics are performing what they have to do, trying to resuscitate her, and it was unsuccessful. Like I said, I already knew, but it was unsuccessful. They left. Shortly after they left, you know, I had my moment with my mom. I actually went in there and I actually closed my mom's eyes, kissed her on the forehead, closed her eyes, and told her that now she can truly rest in peace.
I sat down in the chair and I could still smell her. But what came to my mind was a week before she passed, she had mentioned to me, she said, I'm tired. I'm tired. I said, but you know, we gotta go, still go. She said, I'm not going. And she would say that from time to time because she was tired. So I'm tired. And she told the people, we said, we'll see you tomorrow. Miss Midget, she said, no, you won't, because I'm not coming back. But God took her. He took her. She didn't go by herself. She didn't die by herself, you know.
In my mind, I'm still thinking now I got to plan a funeral. How do I tell my sister who's laid up in the hospital fighting for her life? How do I tell her this? We can't tell her because this would kill her. So now I have that burden of trying to figure out how that was going to work, plan a funeral, still worry about getting this house done. It was a lot. It was truly a lot. But, you know, God's not going to give us more than we can handle.
Of course, my mindset went right to Stephanie. Like, how is she going to, you know, handle this? And, you know, just what kind of mindset and frame of mind is she going to be in? Is this going to be too much for her? Is this going to take her over the edge?
That to me was probably the roughest day of this whole ordeal.
She died peacefully, man, you know. And the thing about it was, I was just like 3 feet, 4 feet away from her. And it's almost like God put me in a dream or like a nap. Well, he did what he did. Excuse me.
So I get a call yesterday from the restoration company that's working on my mother's house, trying to get it back together after the fire that occurred in late January. I'm told that the workers are doing their thing, and 2 young black men come in there and rob them of their money, of their tools, while they're working. I mean, we talk about what, you know, sending immigrants back and all this old crazy stuff and whatever that means. Look at us, though. Come on, man, we got to do better than this. Folks just trying to work hard, make a living.
and our young black dudes are doing stuff like this, come on, man. We got to do better than this. We really do.
It seemed like every turn, man, every time we thought we had our momentum, something would happen. Whether it's we got to stop because we don't have permits, we got to stop because paperwork with mortgage companies or whatever aren't being given to us because you can't get people on the phone. Then when you finally get started, somebody breaks into the house. So I mean, it just seemed like on every turn it was something that was trying to prevent us from being able to take this on, to get this completed. So after the funeral, getting Mom put to rest and getting Stephanie home, we finally got to the point where we could focus back on the house, and with the restoration team, with Chevy Chase Remodeling, and Steve and his fantastic people, we got it done. We finally got the house completed. We still had some inspection stuff that but every time, one of the things that helped, every time I would come over, it would amaze me from the transformation that we would see. And that was one of the things that made me feel good, that we kept seeing progress that way. I saw the house coming back to life. I would just come over here and just walk through the house, and take pictures and do this and that and other. And it was, I just knew, because of Stephanie's condition, she couldn't come over. So I would show her and she would cry and we'd laugh, and, and it just brought back hope that this was going to, end the way that it needed to end, and by the grace of God, it did. So it took 14 months. It took a lot of blood, sweat, literally blood, sweat, and tears to get them back into the home. But, Stephanie and Eric was able to move back into the home, and, hopefully we'll live happily ever after. But if we, anything that comes our way, we're prayerful, we're believing people, which I think is one of the things that helped us, tremendously with this. So with the help of Chubb, the insurance company Chubb, and like I said, with Chevy Chase Remodeling, Steve and his group, I'm forever grateful. I've learned a lot in this process, and I hope that no one ever has to go through this whole process. But if you do, just know that you can, and just your resources, just take your time. You're gonna cry, you're gonna be frustrated, the whole nine, but just know that you can do it, you'll get it done, because I'm living proof that we did. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this was to kind of be a sounding board, to let people know you're not in it by yourself. It is somebody else who's gone through this process. Some people have gone through a lot worse than what you've gone through. And I've talked to people, I've known people who have lost everything and didn't have insurances that could help them in this and that and other. That wasn't our case. But I'm just grateful that I was able to keep my health. I was able to have people around me, like my wife, to be able to be encouraging and taking the burden off of things that I could, so that I could go take care of other things, because you can't do this by yourself. I don't care who you are, you can't do it by yourself. So, like I said, thank you to everybody who helped. We're back in the house. And again, this is for those who may need help going through an unfortunate situation like that. But just know, you're not in it by yourself. And if this can be a help for anybody, one person, if it can be a help for one person, then I'm good.
No, at the end of the day, being in business obviously is about making money and profit. But in a situation like this, it really felt good to put Scott and his family back into their home after such a tragedy. And, you know, for us, that's truly the most important part of what we do.
You know, the house is beautiful. It's fully restored. You know, after having to be gutted, it's fully restored. It's beautiful. The restoration company did a wonderful job. You know, everyone that was involved. And, you know, Mom's legacy lives on, you know, in and around the house with us. You know, she would be proud.
We, at the end of the day, we put them back in their home, and we felt really, really good about that piece.
Come this way. Yeah, come this way. Cause so this is gonna be your room right here. So that's gonna be.
Oh, don't have the step no more.
Yeah, I told you I got that fixed. So you could just walk in.